Sign these papers now." The mother-in-law's scream shattered the dinner table silence. Divorce papers slammed down, inches from her pregnant belly. "You're a leech, a parasite sucking this family dry." Her hands trembled. The baby kicked. "My son was too weak to throw you out, so I'm doing it myself. Sign them. Tonight." 50 guests watched in frozen silence. Business partners stared. Her husband sat 3 feet away, his arm wrapped around the mistress his mother had chosen for him. He looked at her once, said nothing. The mistress smiled. Her hands shook over the papers, her baby kicking harder inside her. What none of them knew, she secretly controlled the $10 billion deal they were celebrating. Every contract, every supplier, every single dollar. What she did next destroyed 3 generations of wealth in 60 seconds. Listen. Before this story continues, I need something from you. If you've ever felt invisible, dismissed, or told you weren't enough, hit that subscribe button right now. Then comment below with just 3 words, "I am enough." This matters more than you think. Every subscription sends this story to another woman who's been made to feel worthless, who's enduring what she thinks she must endure, who doesn't know yet that quiet strength can shatter empires. Your action right now, this single moment, could be the message someone desperately needs to see. Don't skip this. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the day she walked into that mansion as a bride with no idea she was entering a war. Stay until the final minute, because what happens at the end will show you exactly why they never saw her coming. Emma Hale's eyes opened every 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before her alarm. The darkness pressed against the window of her small corner bedroom, the one Lorraine had assigned her after the wedding, the one farthest from Michael's master suite. Her hand moved instinctively to her swollen belly, 5 months now, and she whispered the same promise she made every morning. "Soon, baby. Soon we'll be free." But freedom felt like a fairy tale in the Vance mansion, a sprawling fortress of marble and malice, where every breath she took was monitored, measured, and mocked. She could already hear Lorraine's heels clicking against the hallway tiles, that distinctive sharp rhythm that announced her arrival like a death knell. Emma sat up slowly, her back aching, and reached for the worn notebook hidden beneath her mattress. Inside were dates, times, and words, every insult catalogued like evidence in a trial that hadn't happened yet. Careless, incompetent, leech. She traced her finger over yesterday's entry and added today's date, leaving the rest blank. It would fill itself soon enough. The door swung open without a knock. Lorraine stood there, perfectly dressed in a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "You're still in bed?" Her voice dripped with manufactured shock, as if Emma sleeping at dawn was some unforgivable crime. "Michael's breakfast won't make itself, dear. Or have you forgotten your responsibilities again?" Emma stood, her movements deliberately calm despite the fury burning in her chest. "I'm coming, Lorraine." She kept her voice neutral, empty of the anger that would only be weaponized against her later. Lorraine's eyes swept over her nightgown with visible disgust, lingering on her belly with a look that made Emma's skin crawl. "You're showing more every day," Lorraine said, stepping closer, invading the small space Emma had left. "I hope you're not planning to embarrass us at the charity gala next week. We have standards in this family, and waddling around like a cow isn't one of them." She smiled then, that razor-sharp smile that never reached your eyes. "But then again, you've never quite understood standards, have you? Have you ever lived with someone who made you feel worthless every single day?" Emma had. For 18 months now, ever since Michael brought her to this house as his wife, promising love and partnership, only to transform into his mother's puppet the moment they crossed the threshold. She descended the grand staircase carefully, one hand on the railing, the other protecting her stomach, while Lorraine followed 2 steps behind, narrating her inadequacies like a tour guide. "Watch your posture, Emma. You walk like a servant, not a Vance. Though I suppose that's accurate, isn't it?" Lorraine's laugh was soft, intimate, meant only for Emma to hear. The staff bustled through the foyer below, carefully avoiding eye contact, trained by months of witnessing these morning rituals to pretend they saw and heard nothing. The kitchen was Emma's battlefield. She tied her apron with practiced efficiency and began preparing Michael's breakfast. Eggs over medium, wheat toast lightly buttered, coffee black with exactly half a sugar cube. Lorraine settled onto a stool at the marble island, watching like a predator, observing wounded prey. Did you remember the seasoning this time? Last week's omelet was absolutely tasteless. Michael was too polite to say anything, of course, but I could see his disappointment. Emma cracked the eggs, her movements precise despite her trembling hands. Michael had eaten 3 servings that morning and asked for the recipe. But Lorraine's version of reality was the only one that mattered in this house, and truth was whatever she decided it was. "I'll make sure it's perfect," Emma said quietly. "You always say that." Lorraine leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than screaming. "But perfect and you don't belong in the same sentence, do they?" Michael could have married anyone. Rebecca Chun was interested, Stanford graduate, family, in shipping, gorgeous figure. But he chose you instead, and now look where we are. The eggs sizzled in the pan. Emma focused on them, on the gentle motion required to flip them without breaking the yolk, because if she looked at Lorraine's face right now, she might say something that would destroy everything she'd been building. "I love Michael," she said instead, and it was almost funny how true those words had once been. Love. Lorraine tasted the word like spoiled milk. Love doesn't pay for this house, dear. Love doesn't maintain our reputation. Michael needs a partner who strengthens the Vance name, not someone who drains our resources and embarrasses us in front of colleagues. She paused, letting the words sink in like poison. "Tell me, Emma, what exactly do you contribute to this family besides being a burden? What would you say to someone who called you worthless every single day?" Emma plated the eggs, added the toast, and poured the coffee with hands that had stopped shaking because she'd learned to channel fear into focus. She carried the breakfast to the dining room, where Michael sat scrolling through his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's cold light. He didn't look up when she entered. "Morning," she said softly, setting the plate before him. He grunted something that might have been acknowledgement or might have been dismissal. She'd stopped trying to tell the difference. Lorraine swept in behind her, taking her seat at the table's head like a queen holding court. "Michael, darling, I was just telling Emma how important next week's gala is." Lorraine's voice transformed, warm and sweet for her son, saving all her venom for moments when his attention drifted elsewhere. "The Taiwanese delegation will be there, and we absolutely must make the right impression. The family deal depends on it." Michael finally looked up, and for just a second, Emma saw the man she'd married, soft eyes, gentle smile, the promising young executive who'd courted her with poetry and weekend trips to the coast. Then Lorraine cleared her throat, and that man vanished, replaced by someone Emma barely recognized. "Mom's right," he said, cutting into his eggs without tasting them. "This deal is everything. We can't afford any mistakes." "Of course," Emma said, still standing because no one had invited her to sit. "I understand. Do you?" Lorraine's question hung in the air like smoke. "Because understanding and executing are very different things, and your track record suggests you struggle with both." She turned to Michael. "Perhaps Emma should stay home from the gala. We wouldn't want any unfortunate incidents, especially in her condition." Michael chewed slowly, considering. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. The gala was where the Taiwanese partners would finalize the contract, where $10 billion would change hands, where the future of the Vance Empire would be secured. It was also where Emma needed to be, though neither of them knew why yet. "Let's decide later," Michael said finally, and Lorraine's smile sharpened. "Of course, darling. Whatever you think is best." She stood, smoothing her pantsuit. "Emma, clean this up when Michael's finished. And do try to make yourself presentable today. We have guests this afternoon, and I prefer they didn't think we'd hired new kitchen staff when they see you shuffling about." Emma nodded, her throat too tight for words. She watched them leave together, mother and son, their heads bent close in conversation she'd never be part of. The dining room felt cavernous suddenly, all that expensive furniture and crystal chandeliers surrounding her like witnesses to her humiliation. She cleared the table mechanically, carrying dishes back to the kitchen where Maria, the housekeeper, worked quietly at the sink. "You okay, Mrs. Vance?" Maria's voice was gentle, her eyes sympathetic in a way that made Emma want to cry, because kindness in this house was so rare it felt like violence. "I'm fine," Emma lied, because what else could she say? That she was drowning? That every morning she woke up and couldn't believe this was her life? That the man she'd loved had become a stranger who let his mother destroy her piece by piece? She rinsed Michael's plate and thought about the notebook under her mattress, about the recordings on her phone, about the documents in her safety deposit box that no one knew existed. Could you survive 18 months of someone telling you you're worthless? Emma was about to prove she could do more than survive. She was about to show them that the quietest people, the ones everyone underestimates, are often the most dangerous. But not yet. Not today. Today she would endure, as she'd endured every day before, adding another entry to her notebook, another recording to her collection, another nail in the coffin she was building for the people who tried to bury her alive. The afternoon guests arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, a collection of Michael's business associates, and their perfectly polished wives, who air-kissed Lorraine like old friends, and looked through Emma like she was furniture. She stood near the tea service, her role clearly defined, without anyone saying a word. Pour, smile, disappear. The living room buzzed with conversation about markets and mergers, the kind of talk that made Emma invisible even when she was standing right there. "Emma, dear, could you bring fresh cream?" Lorraine's voice cut through the chatter, sweet as poison honey. "This has gone slightly off, I think. Or perhaps it's just me." She held up her cup with exaggerated concern, and 3 women immediately leaned in to examine it, their faces arranging themselves into masks of polite worry. Emma took the cup, knowing the cream was perfectly fresh because she'd opened it an hour ago, and walked to the kitchen with measured steps, while behind her Lorraine stage whispered, "Poor thing tries so hard, but domestic skills just aren't everyone's gift." Laughter followed, soft and cruel. Emma's hands shook as she poured new cream into a pristine pitcher, the kind of shaking that came from swallowing rage so hot it burned going down. She returned to find the conversation had shifted to restaurants and vacation homes, topics she had no experience with because Michael never took her anywhere anymore. "Here you are, Lorraine," she said quietly, setting the pitcher on the table. "Thank you." Lorraine didn't look at her. "Everyone, this is Emma, Michael's wife. She's been such a help around the house since she's not working anymore. Quite the adjustment, I'm sure, going from retail management to full-time homemaking." The way she said retail management made it sound like a disease, and homemaking like a punishment. One of the women, a blonde in a Chanel suit, smiled at Emma with practiced sympathy. "How wonderful that you're embracing traditional values," the woman said, her tone suggesting Emma had no other choice. "And with a baby on the way, you must be so busy preparing the nursery." Her eyes flickered to Emma's belly, then away, as if pregnancy was vaguely embarrassing. "We're working on it," Emma said, because what else could she say? That there was no nursery? That Lorraine had forbidden her from touching the spare rooms, claiming they were for important guests? That Michael came home later every night and barely acknowledged her existence? Have you ever been in a room full of people and felt completely alone? Emma had mastered that feeling. She poured tea for 7 people, each cup prepared exactly how they liked it, because Lorraine had drilled the preferences into her head during morning briefings that felt like military interrogations. Mrs. Chun took lemon, no sugar. Mr. Davidson wanted 2 sugars, a splash of milk. Judge Morrison drank it black. Emma's value in this house was measured by her ability to remember these details and execute them flawlessly, while remaining as invisible as possible. "Michael should be joining us soon," Lorraine announced, checking her phone with a small frown. "He's just finished a call with the Taiwanese partners. This deal has consumed all his time lately, but that's what ambition looks like." She glanced at Emma pointedly. Some people understand sacrifice for success. Others need it explained. The blonde woman leaned forward, interest sparking in her eyes. "I heard this deal could be worth billions. Is that true, Lorraine? Michael must be under tremendous pressure." The conversation shifted to business, and Emma used the distraction to step back toward the wall, trying to make herself smaller. But Lorraine's radar never stopped tracking her. Emma, you're hovering. Either sit down properly or go check on the kitchen. You're making everyone uncomfortable just standing there. Lorraine's smile never wavered, but her eyes were ice. Emma felt 7 pairs of eyes turned toward her, some pitying, others merely curious, all confirming her status as the help rather than family. She murmured an excuse and retreated, her face burning with humiliation that had become so routine she almost didn't feel it anymore. Almost. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter and pulled out her phone, opening the recording app that had been running in her pocket the entire time. She saved the file with today's date and a simple note. Guests, living room, retail comment. Her collection was growing, a digital monument to every casual cruelty, every calculated insult, every moment they assumed she was too broken to fight back. What would you do if someone humiliated you in front of strangers every single day? Emma was building her answer one recording at a time. Michael arrived 20 minutes later, his entrance transforming the room's energy like someone had turned on a light. Emma heard the greetings from the kitchen, the warmth in everyone's voices, the genuine affection they had for him. He was charming when he wanted to be the golden boy of the Vance Empire, and these people saw that version of him. They didn't see the man who came home and walked past his pregnant wife without speaking, who let his mother torture her daily, who had slowly become a stranger wearing her husband's face. Emma. Lorraine's voice carried from the living room, sharp with command. Michael's here. Bring fresh cups. Emma arranged new china on a tray with practiced efficiency, adding small cookies she'd baked that morning because Lorraine insisted homemade touches impress guests. She carried the tray into the living room where Michael stood near the fireplace, his suit jacket draped over one arm, looking every inch the successful executive. He glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said, and that single word contained less warmth than he'd give a stranger. Emma set down the tray, and Lorraine immediately began serving, taking over the role Emma had been performing all afternoon, as if to demonstrate how it should be done properly. Michael accepted his cup without looking at who handed it to him, already deep in conversation with Judge Morrison about regulatory frameworks and international contracts. "Michael, darling, tell everyone about Taiwan," Lorraine prompted, her voice glowing with pride. "The deal is nearly finalized, isn't it?" She shot Emma a look that said, "See what real contribution looks like." Emma stood near the doorway, uncertain whether she was dismissed or expected to stay, trapped in the familiar limbo of neither belonging nor being free to leave. "It's close," Michael said, and for the first time that afternoon, he looked directly at Emma. Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been guilt or might have been nothing at all. "The partners want to meet the family next week at the gala. They're traditional, big on family values and legacy." He paused. "Mom thinks it might be better if Emma stays home, given her condition." The room went quiet, that particular silence that happens when everyone pretends they didn't hear something awkward. Emma's throat tightened. "I'm fine, Michael. I can attend." Her voice came out smaller than she intended, and Lorraine pounced on the weakness like a cat on a mouse. "Darling, no one's questioning your health. It's about appropriateness. The gala is a black tie affair with hours of standing and socializing. You'd be miserable and honestly you'd be a distraction." Lorraine's concern sounded so genuine that Emma almost believed it herself. "We need Michael focused on closing this deal, not worried about you feeling faint or needing to sit down every 5 minutes. Would you let someone erase you from the most important night of your husband's career?" Michael was watching her now, waiting for her to agree, to make this easy for him the way she always did. The guest shifted uncomfortably, and Emma saw her reflection in the mirror above the fireplace, pale, tired, wearing a dress Lorraine had called frumpy that morning. She looked like someone who didn't belong at a billion-dollar negotiation, someone who'd be out of place among silk gowns and champagne. "Whatever you think is best," Emma heard herself say, hating how automatic the surrender was, how thoroughly they'd trained her to accept less than nothing. Michael's relief was visible, and Lorraine's triumph was practically radiant. The conversation moved on, Emma already forgotten, and she slipped from the room like smoke, unnoticed and unmissed. In her small bedroom, she added another entry to her notebook. Uninvited from gala. Public humiliation. Michael is complicit. Her hand moved across the page with steady purpose, and beneath the words, she wrote something else. Something that had been growing in her mind for months. They think I need their permission. They think I have nowhere else to go. They have no idea what I actually control. She underlined the last sentence twice, pressing hard enough that the pen nearly tore through the paper. That evening, Michael came to her room for the first time in weeks. He stood in the doorway, loosening his tie, looking uncomfortable in a way that suggested his mother had sent him. About the gala, he started, and Emma waited, giving him nothing, forcing him to fill the silence. It's just complicated right now. This deal is everything to the family. I need to be focused. And I'm a distraction, Emma finished for him, keeping her voice neutral. Michael flinched slightly, which meant some part of him still recognized how wrong this was. But recognition wasn't the same as action, and he proved that by nodding slowly. Just for now. Once everything's settled, things will be different. The same promise he'd been making for 18 months, always just out of reach, always conditional on some future that never arrived. Emma looked at her husband and wondered when exactly he died, because the man standing in her doorway was definitely a ghost of someone she used to know. Okay, Michael. She turned away, dismissing him with the same casual cruelty he'd shown her, and heard him hesitate before leaving. Alone again, Emma opened her laptop and checked the encrypted files she'd been building for months. Corporate documents, financial records, proof of ownership in places Michael and Lorraine didn't even know existed. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Power isn't given, baby girl. It's taken. And the best time to take it is when everyone thinks you have nothing left to lose. Emma was almost there. Almost at that perfect moment of having nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The gala they were excluding her from would be the beginning of their end, and they'd never see it coming. The days before the gala moved like slow torture, each one revealing new layers of Emma's calculated exclusion from the family she'd married into. Morning briefings happened behind closed doors now. Lorraine and Michael huddled in the study while Emma passed by with laundry or cleaning supplies, always moving, always working, never invited. She caught fragments of conversation through the heavy oak door. Taiwanese partners expect tradition, family presentation matters, the wife situation needs managing. And each phrase landed like a physical blow because she understood perfectly that the wife situation meant her. Tuesday morning, she found Lorraine sorting through mail at the breakfast table, setting aside thick cream-colored envelopes embossed with gold. What are those? Emma asked, knowing she shouldn't. Knowing curiosity in this house was treated like a crime. Lorraine looked up with that particular smile she reserved for moments when she could inflict maximum damage with minimum effort. Gala invitations. The calligraphy alone cost $3,000. She held one up to the light, admiring it. Michael and I will be seated at the head table with the Taiwanese delegation. Judge Morrison and his wife will be there, the Chens, Senator Bradford. All the people who matter. The unspoken message hung heavy. Emma wasn't among them. It's a shame you won't be there, but really it's for the best. Some environments require a certain polish. Have you ever been told you don't shine bright enough for the life you're living? Emma set down the juice she'd been pouring, her hand remarkably steady considering the rage boiling beneath her skin. I could have prepared. Given time I could have. But Lorraine cut her off with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. Prepared? Darling, this isn't about preparation. It's about breeding, about instinct, about knowing how to move in these circles without thinking about it. You can't learn that in a few weeks. She returned to sorting envelopes, dismissing Emma with the casual cruelty of someone swatting a fly. Besides, Michael agrees it's better this way. He told me about himself last night. Said he'd be too worried about you to focus on the negotiations. The lie was so smooth Emma almost missed it, but she'd learned to hear the truth beneath Lorraine's words. Michael hadn't said that. Lorraine had convinced him to say it, had planted the idea until he believed it was his own, because that was her gift, making people dance to music only she could hear. Emma picked up her juice and left without another word, but in her pocket, her phone had been recording the entire conversation. That afternoon, Michael's study door was open for once, and Emma saw him bent over contracts spread across his desk, his expression tight with concentration. She knocked softly, and he looked up with surprise, as if he'd forgotten she lived here. "What is it?" Not "how are you?" or "is everything okay?" Just a distracted question from a man too busy for basic humanity. "Can we talk about the gala?" Emma stepped inside uninvited, claiming space she wasn't usually given. Michael's jaw tightened, and she saw him glance at his phone as if calculating how quickly he could escape this conversation. "I want to be there, Michael. It's important to me. To us. Emma, we've been over this." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples in a gesture of exhaustion she might have sympathized with if she wasn't so tired herself. The Taiwanese partners are conservative, traditional. They expect a certain image, and right now, with you pregnant and, he stopped, searching for words that wouldn't sound as cruel as they were. And what? Not polished enough? Not breeding material? Emma threw Lorraine's words back at him, watching his face carefully. Guilt flickered there, brief as lightning, before his expression hardened into something she barely recognized. This was the man Lorraine had shaped, the son who'd learned to value empire over everything else, including the woman carrying his child. "That's not fair," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're twisting things. I'm trying to protect you from a difficult situation. These events are exhausting, full of people who'll judge every word you say, every move you make. Mom thinks. Your mother thinks I'm an embarrassment." Emma's voice cut through his excuses like a knife through butter. "And you agree with her, or you wouldn't be sitting here telling me I can't attend the most important night of your career." She moved closer to the desk, her belly brushing against its edge, a reminder of the life they'd created together, the promises he'd made. "When did I become someone you hide instead of someone you're proud of?" Michael stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. "That's not. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. This deal is $10 billion, Emma. $10 billion. It secures our family's future for generations. If I mess this up because I'm distracted or worried about you," he stopped, realizing too late what he'd revealed. "Would your husband call you a distraction from success?" Emma felt something break inside her, not loudly, but with quiet finality, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "I understand perfectly," she said softly. "You've made your choice. The deal matters. The money matters. Your mother's approval matters. I don't." She turned to leave, and Michael grabbed her arm, not hard but firm enough to stop her. "Don't do this. Don't make me the bad guy here." His voice carried a note of desperation that might have moved her once, but Emma had learned that desperation without action was just noise. "After the gala, things will calm down. We can focus on the baby, on us. Just give me this one night to get through." Emma looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face, memorizing this moment because she knew it would matter later. "You'll get your night, Michael. Don't worry about me interfering." She pulled free gently, leaving him standing there with his contracts and his justifications, and she felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty that everything was about to change. That evening, Lorraine hosted a small dinner for key business associates, another event Emma wasn't invited to attend beyond serving the meal. She moved through the dining room like a ghost, setting plates and pouring wine while conversation swirled around her. Judge Morrison was discussing international law, Mrs. Chun sharing insights about Taiwanese business culture, and Lorraine holding court like a queen among her subjects. Michael sat at the table's head, laughing at something Senator Bradford said, looking relaxed and confident in a way he never was around Emma anymore. "More wine, anyone?" Emma asked quietly, and several glasses were pushed toward her without their owners looking up. She was furniture again, background decoration in her own home, and the humiliation of it should have destroyed her. Instead, it fed the growing fire in her chest, the absolute certainty that survival wasn't enough anymore. She wanted justice. She wanted recognition. She wanted them to understand exactly what they'd underestimated. As she poured Judge Morrison's wine, he finally acknowledged her with a polite nod. Thank you, Emma. How are you feeling? That baby must be getting heavy. His kindness felt shocking in a room usually devoid of it, and Emma saw Lorraine's expression tighten with disapproval at the attention. I'm managing, thank you. Emma set down the bottle and started to retreat, but the judge continued, apparently unaware or unconcerned about Lorraine's silent fury. My wife was miserable during her 3rd trimester. You young women are tougher than you look. He smiled warmly, and Emma felt tears threaten for the first time in weeks, because casual kindness was so rare it undid her defenses. Will you be at the gala? I'd love to introduce you to my daughter. She's about your age, works in corporate law. The table went quiet. Emma felt every eye on her, felt the weight of explanation crushing down, but before she could speak, Lorraine smoothly intervened. Unfortunately, Emma won't be attending. Doctor's orders, isn't that right, dear? We can't risk any complications with the baby. The lie was delivered with such maternal concern that Judge Morrison nodded sympathetically. Of course, health comes first. Well, I hope we'll see you at future events. He raised his glass in a small toast to her, and Emma managed to smile before escaping to the kitchen, where she could finally breathe. Behind the closed door, she leaned against the counter and let one tear fall, just one, before wiping it away and straightening her spine. Crying accomplished nothing. Action did. She pulled out her phone and opened the encrypted folder where she'd been storing evidence for months. Financial documents proving her ownership of Carter Industries, the corporation her mother had built from nothing and left entirely to Emma before she died. The same corporation that held controlling interest in the Taiwanese manufacturing partnerships the Vance family desperately needed for their precious $10 billion deal. The same corporation Michael and Lorraine had no idea she controlled, because Emma had kept her maiden name off all official documents, operating through lawyers and trusts that made her invisible. What would you do if you held all the power and no one knew? Emma had been asking herself that question for 18 months, building her answer piece by piece. The gala would happen. The Taiwanese partners would arrive. Michael and Lorraine would present their perfect family image, their carefully crafted empire built on her erasure. And then Emma would reveal exactly who held the real power, who controlled the deal they'd sacrificed everything for, who had been watching and recording and preparing while they treated her like she was nothing. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. Documents ready. Trust papers filed. You have complete control. Just say when. Emma typed back a single word. Soon. She deleted the conversation, closed the encrypted files, and returned to the dining room to pour more wine and clear more plates, playing the role they'd assigned her with perfect precision. Because the best revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was patient, methodical, and absolutely devastating. And Emma had learned patience in the hardest school possible. The daily humiliation of living with people who thought she was too broken to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. 3 weeks before the gala, Emma woke at 2:14 a.m. to an empty bed and the sound of Michael's voice drifting up from his study. She lay still, listening to the low murmur of conversation punctuated by soft laughter she hadn't heard from him in months. The kind of laughter that came easy, unforced, intimate. Her hand moved to her belly where the baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing her tension, and she whispered, I know, sweetheart. I feel it too. She rose quietly, pregnancy making her movements awkward but determination making them silent. The hallway was dark except for the thin line of light beneath Michael's study door, and as she approached, his words became clearer. I know. It's complicated right now, but after the deal closes, everything changes. I promise. A pause, then softer, almost tender. I miss you too, Vanessa. Have you ever heard your husband promise another woman the future you thought was yours? Emma's breath caught, her hand flying to her mouth to trap the sound threatening to escape. Vanessa. The name landed like a punch, and suddenly dozens of small details assembled themselves into a devastating picture. Late nights at the office, cologne that smelled different, the way he flinched when she touched him. His phone always face down on every surface. She'd known, somewhere deep and denied, but hearing it confirmed was a special kind of agony that made her knees weak. No, she doesn't know anything. Michael continued, and Emma realized he was talking about her. She's so focused on the baby and dealing with Mom that she barely notices when I'm gone. Honestly, it's easier this way. Less complicated. His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that carved pieces from Emma's heart. After Taiwan, after everything's secured, I'll handle it. We'll be together properly. Just be patient with me. Emma backed away from the door, her body moving on autopilot while her mind reeled. She made it to her room and closed the door with trembling hands before the tears came, hot and furious and silent because even in her breaking, she couldn't afford to be heard. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Emma pressed both hands to her stomach. "We're okay," she whispered fiercely. "We don't need him. We never did." But the words felt hollow against the crushing weight of betrayal. She didn't sleep. Instead, she opened her laptop and searched for Vanessa, finding her easily because Michael had never been careful about hiding things from someone he considered too broken to fight back. Vanessa Chun, 28, Stanford MBA, daughter of the same Mrs. Chun who'd attended Lorraine's tea party, who'd be at the gala, whose family shipping business was integral to the Taiwanese deal. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. This wasn't just an affair, it was strategic, possibly even encouraged by Lorraine as a way to secure business partnerships and erase Emma completely. Would you forgive a betrayal that was calculated? Emma stared at Vanessa's perfect social media photos, her designer clothes and Harvard law credentials, her family's legacy written across every carefully curated image. This was who Michael really wanted, who fit into the Vance empire without friction, who spoke the language of wealth and ambition fluently. Emma was just the mistake he'd made before he understood what success required. And now he was correcting that error one late-night phone call at a time. Morning came without Emma having moved from her laptop. She'd spent hours documenting everything, screenshots, timestamps, notes about Michael's recent behavior that now made terrible sense. When he appeared at breakfast looking tired but satisfied, Emma watched him with new eyes. He kissed his mother's cheek, accepted coffee from the housekeeper, and barely glanced at Emma before diving into his phone. Business as usual, except now Emma understood that usual meant lying, cheating, and planning a future that didn't include her. "You look exhausted, darling," Lorraine observed, studying Michael with the sharp attention she never directed at Emma. "Late night." Something in her tone suggested she knew exactly why Michael had been awake, and Emma's stomach turned with the realization that Lorraine might be orchestrating this entire betrayal. "Taiwan keeps different hours," Michael said smoothly. "Had to take some calls. But it's worth it. Everything's falling into place perfectly." He finally looked at Emma, and she saw nothing in his eyes, no guilt, no recognition, just blank indifference. "How'd you sleep?" The question was automatic, meaningless, the kind of thing you ask because social convention demands it. "Fine," Emma lied, matching his emptiness with her own. She poured herself juice with steady hands, proud that 18 months of daily humiliation had taught her to hide everything that mattered. Inside, she was screaming. Outside, she was calm as glass. "Michael, can we talk later?" "About the nursery." She threw out the question like bait, curious to see if he'd take it or reveal how little he cared about their child. He barely paused before shaking his head. "Not today. I've got back-to-back meetings, then dinner with the Chun family tonight." "Business dinner," he added quickly, but Emma caught the flash of something in his expression. Anticipation, excitement, the look of a man about to see someone who mattered. "We'll talk this weekend, okay? After everything settles down." Everything was always going to settle down later, in some imaginary future where Michael would suddenly transform back into the man she'd married. Emma nodded agreeably, playing the role of patient wife, while Lorraine watched their exchange with satisfaction. "The Chens are crucial to this deal," Lorraine said, directing her words at Michael, but clearly intending Emma to hear. "Mrs. Chen's daughter will be there, I assume? Vanessa? Such a lovely girl, so accomplished. You two always have so much to discuss." There it was, confirmation that Lorraine knew, approved, possibly even encouraged Michael's affair. Emma's fingers tightened around her juice glass, but her face remained serene. "She sounds wonderful," Emma said softly, and Lorraine's smile sharpened with triumph because she thought Emma was too stupid or too defeated to understand the subtext. "I hope the dinner goes well." Michael stood, straightening his tie, already mentally gone from this house and the pregnant wife he was discarding. "I'll be late, don't wait up." He grabbed his briefcase and left without kissing Emma goodbye, without asking how she felt, without any acknowledgement that they were supposed to be partners building a life together. The door closed behind him, and Lorraine turned to Emma with barely concealed glee. "You really should make more effort, Emma. Michael's under tremendous stress, and you just sit there looking miserable. Men like Michael need support, encouragement, someone who understands the demands of his position." She sipped her coffee delicately. "Vanessa understands. She speaks his language. That's why they connect so well." The cruelty was breathtaking in its openness, no longer even bothering with pretense. "Did you think you could keep a man like Michael with love alone?" The unspoken question hung between them, and Emma understood that this had always been Lorraine's endgame. Replace Emma with someone more suitable, someone who enhanced the Vance name instead of diluting it. The baby was an inconvenience, but one that could be managed with lawyers and custody arrangements once Michael's empire was secure. Emma was being erased in real time, her marriage dismantled piece by piece while she was expected to smile and accept it. "You're right, Lorraine," Emma said quietly, standing with care because her belly made quick movements difficult. "I haven't been understanding enough about Michael's needs." She carried her dishes to the kitchen, feeling Lorraine's satisfied gaze on her back, letting the older woman believe she'd won. In the kitchen, Emma pulled out her phone and texted her lawyer. "Accelerate timeline. I need everything ready before the gala. Everything." The response came within minutes. Confirmed. Papers filed, accounts secured, corporate structure locked. "You have complete control whenever you're ready to execute." Emma deleted the conversation and returned to her room, where she added new entries to her growing documentation. Michael's affair, Lorraine's complicity, the strategic nature of choosing Vanessa Chen specifically. Every betrayal was another nail in the coffin of the life they'd tried to trap her in. That evening, Emma sat by her window, watching the sun set over the city, her notebook open on her lap. She wrote in careful script, "They think I'm powerless because I'm pregnant, because I'm isolated, because I've endured their cruelty without fighting back. They think Michael leaving me for Vanessa will be simple, that I'll accept whatever scraps they offer. They think the empire they're building is secure." She paused, pen hovering over paper. "They have no idea that the empire was never theirs to build. That every partnership, every deal, every dollar they're counting on flows through corporations I control. That the woman they've been destroying holds their entire future in her hands." She underlined the last sentence 3 times, pressing hard enough that the pen tore through paper. Her phone buzzed with a photo from Michael, him, and Vanessa at dinner, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing. The message read, "Successful meeting. Don't wait up." Emma stared at the image, memorizing it, adding it to her collection of evidence. Would you forgive this level of betrayal? She wouldn't. She couldn't. But more importantly, she wouldn't need to. Because forgiveness implied that Michael and Lorraine held power over her emotional future. They didn't. They never had, really. Because while they'd been busy humiliating and betraying her, Emma had been quietly assembling the means to destroy them completely. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, and Emma smiled for the first time all day. "You're right, little one. It's almost time." She closed her notebook, locked her laptop, and prepared for bed. Tomorrow she'd continue playing the role of defeated wife, would endure more insults and dismissals, and would watch Michael and Lorraine celebrate their approaching triumph. But the gala was only weeks away now, and when it arrived, Emma would stop being the victim in their story and become the author of her own. The countdown had begun, and they were completely unaware that their empire was built on sand that was about to shift beneath their feet. The night before the gala arrived with the weight of inevitability, like watching a storm gather on the horizon knowing there's nowhere left to run. Emma sat in her small bedroom while the rest of the mansion buzzed with preparation. Florists arranging centerpieces, caterers setting up for the pre-gala dinner Lorraine was hosting, staff pressing Michael's tuxedo and laying out Lorraine's custom gown. Emma had been specifically instructed to stay in her room, out of sight, so guests wouldn't have to acknowledge the pregnant wife being left behind. The isolation should have hurt, but instead, it felt like freedom. They'd finally given her exactly what she needed: invisibility. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the rhythmic kicks of a baby who seemed to sense the tension. "Tomorrow everything changes," she whispered, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was about to do. "Tomorrow, they learn who we really are." The city sprawled beyond her window, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness, and Emma thought about all the women out there enduring their own quiet hells, swallowing their own humiliations, waiting for someone to tell them they mattered. She was about to show them what happened when you stopped waiting for permission to claim your worth. Her laptop sat open on the bed, displaying the documents she'd reviewed 100 times. Corporate ownership papers proving she controlled Carter Industries, the manufacturing conglomerate her mother had built from nothing and left entirely to Emma. The same company that held exclusive contracts with every Taiwanese supplier the Vance family needed for their precious $10 billion deal. Michael and Lorraine had spent 18 months trying to secure partnerships that Emma could dissolve with a single phone call. The irony was so perfect, it almost made her laugh. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Emma." Michael's voice, uncertain, almost apologetic. She quickly closed the laptop and arranged herself on the bed, playing the part of an exhausted pregnant woman they expected to see. "Come in," she called, her voice deliberately small, defeated. He entered looking uncomfortable in the casual clothes that meant he was between meetings, and Emma noticed his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline, probably mid-conversation with Vanessa. "How are you feeling?" he asked, staying near the door as if her condition might be contagious. Emma wanted to scream at him, to throw her evidence in his face and watch him crumble. But revenge was best served with an audience, and tomorrow's gala would provide exactly that. Instead, she summoned tears that came easier than they should have, letting vulnerability mask the steel beneath. "I'm okay. Tired. The baby's been kicking all day." She wiped at her eyes, and Michael shifted uncomfortably, guilt flickering across his face before being buried under the same indifference he'd worn for months. "I know you have to go tomorrow. I understand it's important." The words tasted like ash, but she forced them out sweetly, watching him relax as she gave him the absolution he desperately wanted. "It's just one night, Emma. After this, after the deal closes, things will be better. I promise." The same empty promise he'd been making since he brought her to this house, and the same one he'd whispered to Vanessa over the phone. How many women was he making promises to while keeping none of them? Emma nodded obediently, and Michael took a step closer, close enough that she could smell Vanessa's perfume on his collar. Something expensive and floral that definitely wasn't what Emma wore. "Your mom's been good at planning everything," Emma said, testing how much he'd admit. "She really wants this to be perfect for you." Michael's expression softened thinking about Lorraine's approval, and Emma saw clearly how thoroughly his mother had shaped him into this hollow version of the man she'd married. The Michael who'd courted her with poetry and promised partnership had been a lie, or maybe just a phase before Lorraine reasserted control. "Mom knows how important this is. The Taiwanese partners, they're traditional. They care about family legacy and reputation. Everything has to look right." He glanced at Emma's belly, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. A pregnant wife at home was better optics than a pregnant wife publicly visible, especially when he was planning to replace her with Vanessa Chun after the deal secured his empire. "I should get back. Mom needs help with the seating arrangements. Would you let him walk away knowing everything you know?" Emma watched him retreat, phone already rising to his ear before he'd cleared the doorway, and she felt nothing but cold certainty. Tomorrow night, while Michael and Lorraine celebrated what they thought was their triumph, Emma would systematically dismantle every assumption they'd built their cruelty on. The gala would be their coronation and their execution, and they'd never see it coming because they'd spent 18 months teaching her to be invisible. After Michael left, Emma opened her notebook one final time, reviewing entries that chronicled months of systematic abuse. Every insult, every dismissal, every calculated cruelty documented with dates and witnesses. She'd recorded conversations on her phone, saved emails, screenshot text messages. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and completely legal. But more than that, she had the corporate documents that proved she controlled their entire financial future, the recordings that would destroy their reputations, and the patience that came from 18 months of learning exactly how they operated. Her phone buzzed with a message from her lawyer. Everything's in place. Trust documents filed, corporate restructuring complete, press releases drafted. Just give the word. Emma typed back, tomorrow night. During the gala. I'll send the signal when I'm ready. She added, make sure the Taiwanese partners get the documents showing true ownership before Michael makes his presentation. Timing is everything. The response was immediate. Understood. They'll know you control Carter Industries before he even stands up to speak. This is going to be beautiful. Emma allowed herself a small smile. Beautiful wasn't the word she'd use. Necessary. Overdue. Justice. Those fit better. But she supposed there was a certain beauty in watching careful plans come together, in seeing 18 months of suffering transform into a weapon precise enough to cut through every lie they'd built. Downstairs, she heard laughter and music starting. Lorraine's pre-gala dinner beginning, the first act of tomorrow's drama. Emma rose carefully and moved to her window, watching luxury cars arrive and deposit guests in evening wear. She recognized faces from business magazines and society pages, the same people who'd attended Lorraine's tea parties and smiled politely while Emma served them. Tomorrow, they'd see her differently. Tomorrow, they'd understand that the pregnant woman they'd pitted or ignored had been orchestrating their host's downfall the entire time. A soft knock came at her door, different from Michael's entitled bang. Mrs. Vance? I brought you dinner. Maria, the housekeeper, one of the few people in this house who'd shown Emma consistent kindness. Emma opened the door to find a tray with soup and bread, simple but thoughtfully prepared. I know you're supposed to stay up here, but I thought you should eat something warm. Thank you, Maria. Emma took the tray, genuinely grateful. You didn't have to do this. Maria smiled sadly, glancing down the hallway where party sounds echoed up the stairs. She lowered her voice to barely a whisper. I know it's not my place, Mrs. Vance, but the way they treat you isn't right. You deserve better than this. Her eyes were kind but pitying, and Emma realized that even Maria, despite her good intentions, saw Emma as helpless. Tomorrow would shatter that perception too. If there's anything I can do to help, anything at all. Emma touched Maria's hand gently. You've already helped more than you know, just by being kind when no one else was. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Tomorrow, after the gala, things are going to change dramatically. When they do, I want you to know you'll be taken care of. Your job is safe, regardless of what happens to this family. Maria's eyes widened with confusion and something that might have been hope. I don't understand, but thank you, Mrs. Vance. I'll pray for you tonight. She left quietly, and Emma closed the door, setting the tray aside. She wasn't hungry, but she forced herself to eat anyway, because tomorrow required strength, clarity, and the absolute certainty that came from knowing you held all the cards in a game everyone else thought you'd already lost. The party downstairs grew louder, celebration premature, but enthusiastic. Emma heard Lorraine's voice cutting through the noise. Tomorrow we secure the future of the Vance legacy. To family, to tradition, to the empire we've built. Cheers followed, glasses clinking, and Emma imagined Michael standing beside his mother, basking in applause for success that hadn't happened yet and never would. Not the way they envisioned. She pulled out the outfit she'd prepared for tomorrow. Not maternity clothes, but a carefully tailored dress that made her pregnancy elegant rather than hidden, professional rather than apologetic. She'd had it custom made weeks ago, preparing for this moment when invisibility would transform into undeniable presence. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, words spoken years ago when Emma was still a child. Power isn't loud, baby girl. Power is knowing exactly when to be silent and exactly when to speak. And when you finally speak, make sure everyone hears you. Have you ever prepared to destroy someone who destroyed you first? Emma laid out the dress with careful precision, arranging jewelry her mother had left her. Simple but expensive, the kind of pieces that spoke of old money and established legacy. Tomorrow, when Emma walked into that gala uninvited, when she revealed the truth about who actually controlled the empire they were celebrating, these details would matter. Every piece of her presentation would reinforce one undeniable fact. She wasn't the broken, helpless victim they'd created. She was the force they should have respected from the beginning. The baby kicked hard, as if agreeing with Emma's thoughts, and she smiled despite the weight of what tomorrow would bring. Your grandmother would have loved this moment, she whispered to her belly. She spent her whole life teaching me that survival wasn't enough, that women like us don't just endure. We transform our suffering into strength that no one can take away. She closed her eyes, feeling her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder, and knew that tomorrow's reckoning was about more than personal revenge. It was about showing every woman who'd ever been dismissed, diminished, or destroyed by people who underestimated them that quiet patience could be the most devastating weapon of all. The morning of the gala arrived with artificial brightness, sunlight streaming through Emma's window like nature itself was oblivious to the war about to unfold. She'd slept surprisingly well, the kind of deep rest that comes from absolute certainty, and woke feeling clear-headed and focused. Today was the day she'd been building toward for 18 months, and every cell in her body hummed with readiness. She dressed carefully in comfortable clothes. They'd expect her to stay hidden until Michael and Lorraine left for the evening, playing the obedient castaway one last time. Downstairs, chaos reigned. Staff rushed between rooms carrying last-minute items. Florists made final adjustments. And Lorraine's voice cut through everything like a conductor's baton, sharp and demanding. Emma moved through the kitchen quietly, making tea she didn't really want, listening to fragments of conversation that confirmed everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Their plan, the one that would collapse spectacularly in a few hours. The car arrives at 6, Lorraine was saying to Michael in the adjacent dining room. We'll make our entrance at 6:30, right when the Taiwanese delegation is being seated. First impressions matter, darling. Everything has to be perfect. Her voice dropped slightly, taking on that conspiratorial tone Emma had learned to hate. I've seated Vanessa beside you at the head table. Her parents will be directly across. Visual presentation matters to these people. They need to see family, legacy, future. Emma's hand tightened around her teacup, but her face remained calm. She'd known Vanessa would be there, prominently displayed as Michael's real partner, while Emma was erased from the narrative entirely. The calculated cruelty of it should have broken her, might have broken the woman she'd been 18 months ago. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who understood that betrayal could be survival's greatest teacher. What about Emma? Michael asked, and Emma's breath caught. For one fragile second, she wondered if he'd developed a conscience, if some part of him still cared. Then Lorraine's dismissive laugh shattered that illusion completely. What about her? She's staying here as planned. Honestly, Michael, you worry too much. She's accepted her place. I spoke with her yesterday, and she was quite reasonable about everything. Almost grateful, actually. The lie was delivered so smoothly Emma almost admired its craftsmanship. After tonight, after the deal is secured, you can handle the situation however you see fit. But for now, she stays invisible. Would you stay invisible if you held all the power? Emma set down her tea and pulled out her phone, sending a quick message to her lawyer. Confirmed. They think I'm staying home. Proceed with Phase 1. The response came instantly. Documents delivered to Taiwanese partners at 5 p.m. They'll know the truth before dinner even starts. This is going to be spectacular. Emma deleted the conversation and moved toward the hallway, intending to retreat to her room, but Lorraine's sharp voice stopped her. Emma, I didn't hear you come down. Were you listening to private conversations? She appeared in the doorway, immaculate in a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her expression combining suspicion with contempt. I was making tea, Lorraine. I didn't mean to intrude. Emma kept her voice soft, apologetic, everything they expected from the broken woman they'd created. Lorraine's eyes narrowed, scanning Emma's face for signs of rebellion or defiance. But Emma had learned this performance too well. She looked down, shoulders slightly hunched, the picture of defeated acceptance. Well, since you're here, let's be clear about today's expectations. Lorraine stepped closer, invading Emma's space in that way she perfected, using physical proximity as dominance. Michael and I are leaving at 6. You'll stay in your room with the door closed. Staff have been instructed not to disturb you or take requests. This is our night, our triumph, and I won't have you creating drama or seeking attention because you're feeling sorry for yourself. I understand, Emma whispered, and Lorraine smiled with satisfaction. Behind that smile was 18 months of successful manipulation, of grinding another woman down until she believed herself worthless. Lorraine had won every battle, so decisively she couldn't imagine losing the war. Good girl. Maybe after tonight, after everything's settled, we can discuss your future more seriously. Michael's been thinking about arrangements that might work better for everyone involved. The unspoken message was clear: divorce, custody negotiations, Emma's complete removal from the Vance empire. But that's tomorrow's concern. Today, you stay invisible and let the adults handle business. She swept away, leaving Emma standing in the hallway with her cold tea and her burning determination. The baby kicked, hard and insistent, and Emma whispered, "I know. Just a few more hours. Then we show them what invisible really means." She returned to her room and locked the door, pulling out the dress she'd prepared and laying it on the bed like armor before battle. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Emma could hear preparations intensifying. Lorraine barking orders, Michael on phone calls speaking Mandarin to the Taiwanese partners, staff rushing to execute last-minute details. At 4 o'clock, she heard Lorraine's stylist arrive to do hair and makeup. At 5, the photographer came to capture pre-event shots of Michael and Lorraine looking powerful and elegant. Emma watched from her window as luxury cars began arriving at the hotel across the city where the gala was being held. Guests in evening were stepping onto red carpets. Her phone buzzed at 5:03 p.m. Documents delivered. Taiwanese partners have everything. The head of their delegation just called asking to speak with you directly. I told them you'd be available after 7. They sounded very interested in meeting the actual owner of Carter Industries. Emma's heart raced, but she kept her breathing steady. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part, walking into that gala uninvited and watching 18 months of strategic planning detonate in real time. At 5:45, she began getting ready. The dress fit perfectly, elegant and expensive without being flashy, making her pregnancy look dignified rather than apologetic. She did her own makeup carefully, keeping it natural but polished, the kind of look that said she belonged in rooms with billionaires and power brokers. Her mother's jewelry completed the ensemble, a simple necklace and earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, old money pieces that carried weight and history. She heard Michael and Lorraine descending the stairs at exactly 6 o'clock, their timing perfect as always. Emma cracked her door open slightly, watching them pose for more photos in the foyer, Lorraine resplendent in a custom gown and Michael striking in his tuxedo. They looked like victory, like success, like people who'd never lost anything that mattered. In 1 hour, that illusion would shatter so completely they'd never rebuild it. "Ready, darling?" Lorraine asked Michael, and he nodded, checking his reflection one final time. "Tonight, we secure everything. The Vance empire becomes unstoppable." They walked out together, mother and son, partners in cruelty and ambition, completely unaware that the empire they were celebrating was already gone, transferred legally and irrevocably to the woman they'd locked in an upstairs bedroom. Emma waited until their car disappeared down the driveway before emerging from her room. Maria stood in the hallway, eyes widening at Emma's transformation. "Mrs. Vance, I thought you were staying home." Her confusion was genuine, touched with concern that Emma might be making a terrible mistake. "Change of plans, Maria." Emma's voice was steady, carrying authority that hadn't been there before, or maybe had always been there, but buried under layers of forced submission. "I need you to call me a car. I'm going to the gala." Maria's mouth opened in protest, fear flickering across her face, because defying Lorraine's direct orders could mean her job. "But Mrs. Vance, they said specifically that you shouldn't." Emma placed a gentle hand on Maria's arm, stopping her mid-sentence. I know what they said, but some situations require you to stop asking permission and start claiming what's yours. My car, please. And Maria. She waited until the housekeeper met her eyes. Whatever happens tonight, remember that I tried to warn you things would change. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. But them? She glanced toward the door where Michael and Lorraine had exited minutes before. They're about to learn that underestimating someone is the most expensive mistake you can make. Maria stared at her for a long moment, something like hope dawning in her expression, before nodding slowly and pulling out her phone to call for a car. Emma returned to her room for one final check, grabbing the clutch that held her phone with all its recordings, the corporate documents proving her ownership, and copies of everything she'd given to the Taiwanese partners. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back, confident, powerful, ready for war. Have you ever walked into a room knowing you were about to destroy everything? Emma descended the grand staircase for the last time as the broken wife who lived in this house. The next time she walked through these doors, she'd be someone entirely different. The woman who owned this house, who controlled the empire, who'd spent 18 months letting them believe they'd won, so their defeat would be absolute. The car waited outside, black and sleek, and as Emma settled into the back seat, her phone buzzed with a final message from her lawyer. The Taiwanese delegation is asking for you by name. Michael doesn't know yet. When you arrive, it's going to be chaotic. Are you ready? Emma typed back 3 words that felt like a battle cry. I was born ready. She hit send, closed her eyes, and let the car carry her toward the gala, where Michael and Lorraine were probably already celebrating their triumph, completely unaware that the pregnant wife they'd dismissed and betrayed was about to walk through those doors and reclaim everything they tried to steal. The city lights blurred past her window, each one a reminder that somewhere out there, women were enduring their own private hells, waiting for permission to fight back. Tonight, Emma would show them that permission was something you gave yourself. The storm was coming, and she was bringing it with her. The ballroom was everything Lorraine had promised, crystal chandeliers casting soft light over tables draped in silk, champagne flowing like water, and 500 of the city's most powerful people mingling in evening, where that cost more than most cars. Emma stood at the entrance for just a moment, invisible among arriving guests, watching Michael and Lorraine hold court at the center of the room, like royalty greeting subjects. Vanessa Chen stood beside Michael, her hand resting on his arm with casual ownership, and Lorraine beamed at them both like she was already planning the wedding. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm as she stepped forward, moving through the crowd with purpose. Heads turned as people noticed her, confusion rippling through the room like disturbed water, because everyone had been told Michael's wife wouldn't be attending. She heard whispers starting. Is that Emma Vance? I thought she was staying home. Does Lorraine know she's here? But she kept walking, her eyes fixed on the head table where her husband stood with his mistress, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Judge Morrison saw her first, his face lighting up with genuine surprise and pleasure. Emma, what a wonderful surprise. You're feeling better? He moved toward her, offering his arm, and Emma took it gratefully, because having an ally in this moment, even one who didn't know he was an ally, made the walk to the head table feel less like a death march. Much better, thank you, Judge Morrison. Her voice carried across the room, cutting through conversations, and she watched Michael's head snap toward her, his expression shifting from confusion to horror in the space of a heartbeat. Lorraine's face drained of color, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips, and Vanessa's smile faltered as she registered the pregnant woman approaching with unmistakable purpose. Emma. Michael's voice was strangled, barely audible. What are you doing here? We agreed, but Emma cut him off with a smile that had nothing to do with happiness and everything to do with showing teeth before the kill. We agreed nothing, Michael. You and your mother decided I should stay home, but I've decided that my presence at this particular dinner is essential. She turned to Vanessa, extending her hand with perfect politeness. You must be Vanessa Chun. I've heard so much about you. My husband speaks your name in his sleep. The barb landed beautifully, Vanessa's face flushing as several nearby guests registered the implication and exchanged knowing looks. Lorraine recovered first, her social training kicking in like armor. Emma, darling, what a surprise. Though perhaps not the best timing, given your condition. Why don't we find you somewhere quiet to rest? She moved to take Emma's arm, to physically remove her from a situation, but Emma stepped back smoothly, positioning herself where Lorraine couldn't reach without making a scene. I'm perfectly comfortable, Lorraine. In fact, I've been looking forward to this dinner for months. Emma's voice was clear, projecting slightly so the gathering crowd could hear every word. Especially since I understand the Taiwanese delegation is here to discuss the manufacturing partnerships that are so crucial to the Vance family's future. She turned toward the delegation's table where 3 impeccably dressed executives sat watching with intense interest. Mr. Chun, head of the delegation and Vanessa's father, stood with a slight bow. Mrs. Vance, we've been hoping to meet you. Your representatives sent us very interesting documents this afternoon. Perhaps we could speak privately. His English was perfect, his tone respectful, but carrying an edge that suggested he knew something everyone else in the room didn't. Michael's confusion was visible, his gaze darting between Emma and Mr. Chun like he was watching a conversation in a language he didn't speak. My representatives? Emma doesn't have representatives. Whatever documents you received must be some kind of mistake, but Mr. Chin raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence with the kind of authority that came from controlling billions of dollars. No mistake, Mr. Vance. The documents were quite clear and legally verified. They show that Carter Industries, which controls all the manufacturing contracts you've been negotiating for, is owned entirely by your wife. He gestured toward Emma with something approaching respect. We spent the last 2 hours verifying the information. Mrs. Vance is the sole owner and decision maker for the company we thought we were partnering with your family to access. The ballroom went silent, 500 conversations stopping mid-sentence, as the implication sank in. Emma watched Michael's face cycle through emotions, confusion, disbelief, denial, and finally a dawning horror that would have been satisfying if it wasn't happening in front of the woman he'd betrayed her with. Lorraine's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking ice. That's impossible, Lorraine whispered, but her voice carried in the silence. Carter Industries belongs to, she stopped, realizing hitting her with visible force. Your mother. But she's been dead for 3 years. You inherited nothing. You told us you inherited nothing. I never told you anything, Lorraine. You never asked. You assumed. Emma's voice was steady, each word landing like a hammer. My mother built Carter Industries from the ground up, and when she died, she left everything to me. The company, the contracts, the partnerships you've spent 18 months trying to secure access to. Every manufacturer you've been courting, every supplier you've been negotiating with, they all answer to me. They always have. Have you ever watched someone realize they've been playing chess with a master while thinking they were teaching a beginner? Michael's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his carefully constructed confidence crumbling in real time. Vanessa stepped back from him slightly, her expression shifting from confusion to calculating distance, as she realized the powerful Vance heir she'd been positioning herself to marry was actually powerless. But the documents, the contracts Michael's been negotiating. Judge Morrison spoke up, his legal mind clearly trying to piece together how this was possible. Emma turned to him, grateful for the chance to explain to someone who might actually understand the brilliance of what her mother had done. We're all conditional on approval from Carter Industries' owner, which was clearly stated in every agreement. My mother taught me early that power is best wielded quietly, so I operated through lawyers and holding companies. Michael and Lorraine never thought to check who actually owned the assets they were trying to access because they assumed. She looked directly at Lorraine, letting contempt show clearly for the first time that I was too stupid, too broken, too insignificant to matter. Lorraine found her voice, though it shook with rage barely contained. This is ridiculous. You can't just walk in here and destroy months of negotiations with some documents. Michael, tell them. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. She gripped his arm desperately, but Michael was staring at Emma like he'd never seen her before, and maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd only ever seen the reflection of what he wanted, a weak woman he could control and eventually discard. It's not a misunderstanding, Mother. Michael's voice was hollow, defeat already settling into his posture. Emma's mother owned Carter Industries. I remember now. Emma mentioned it once when we were dating, but it seemed so small then, just a manufacturing company. I didn't realize, he stopped, the full scope of his miscalculation clearly overwhelming him. He didn't realize it grew, Emma finished for him, her tone almost pitiful. My mother was brilliant, Michael. She took that small company and expanded it strategically, quietly, securing exclusive contracts with every major Asian manufacturer. By the time she died, Carter Industries controlled 80% of the supply chain your family desperately needs. And she left it all to me, with very specific instructions about protecting it from people who would undervalue or misuse it. Mr. Chen cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the business at hand. Mrs. Vance, your mother was a remarkable woman. We worked with her for 15 years, and she always spoke of you with great pride. She told us that when the time came, you would know exactly how to handle her legacy. He smiled slightly. I believe she would be proud of this moment. Would you reveal 18 months of humiliation to a room full of strangers? Emma felt tears threatening, but pushed them back because this moment required strength, not vulnerability. My mother taught me that power without patience is just noise. So I waited. I watched. I documented every insult, every dismissal, every moment my husband and his mother treated me like I was worthless. And I prepared for this exact moment when they would finally understand what they threw away. She pulled her phone from her clutch and held it up, the gesture simple but devastating. I have 18 months of recordings, every cruel word, every calculated humiliation, every piece of evidence proving that the Vance family built their empire on emotional abuse and systematic destruction of anyone who didn't fit their image of success, including the pregnant wife of their heir. She looked directly at Michael, seeing him truly for the first time since she'd arrived. I have your affair with Vanessa documented in detail, including conversations where you and your mother planned to divorce me and erase me from this family after securing the deal you thought was already yours. Vanessa made a small sound of distress, her father's sharp look silencing her immediately. Michael reached for Emma, his hand trembling. Emma, please. We can talk about this privately. You don't have to do this here, but she stepped back, maintaining distance, maintaining control. Private conversations are how you controlled me for 18 months, Michael. This needs to be public, witnessed, undeniable. She turned back to Mr. Chun and his delegation. Gentlemen, I apologize for the drama, but I need you to understand exactly who you'd be partnering with if you proceeded with the Vance family. These are people who value appearance over character, money over humanity, and control over genuine partnership. Mr. Chin nodded slowly, his expression grave. We appreciate your honesty, Mrs. Vance. Traditional values include treating family with respect and honor, which clearly has not happened here. I think my colleagues and I need to reconsider our position. He glanced at Michael with barely concealed disappointment. We will be in touch, Mrs. Vance. With you directly. The ballroom erupted in whispers, guests no longer bothering to hide their shock and fascination. Emma saw Lorraine sink into a chair, her face ashen, her perfect evening shattered beyond repair. She saw Michael standing frozen, his mistress backing away slowly as the reality of his ruined reputation sank in. And she felt the baby kick, strong and triumphant, as if celebrating alongside her. The whispers in the ballroom reached a crescendo before crashing into uncomfortable silence as Emma remained standing at the head table, her pregnant form a stark reminder that this wasn't just business. It was personal, visceral, and happening in real time. Lorraine finally found her voice, standing with visible effort, her perfect composure cracking like fine china under pressure. You ungrateful little, she started, venom pouring out unfiltered for the first time in public. But Emma raised one hand, stopping her cold. Careful, Lorraine. We have 500 witnesses here, and I'm still recording. Emma's voice was ice, each word precisely measured. Every insult you throw right now just adds to the evidence I'll use when I pursue legal action for the systematic abuse you've subjected me to. So please continue. Tell everyone here exactly what you think of me." The threat hung in the air, and Lorraine's mouth snapped shut, rage and impotence warring across her features. Michael stepped forward, his hands raised in placation, desperation making him reckless. "Emma, I know I've made mistakes. I know things have been difficult, but destroying our family in front of all these people, is that really what you want? Think about our child. Think about the life we can still build together." His voice cracked on the last words, and Emma almost pitted him before remembering every night he'd come home smelling like Vanessa's perfume. Every morning he'd walk past her without speaking. "Our child is exactly who I'm thinking about, Michael. Do you really believe I'd raise my daughter in a house where her father cheats openly and her grandmother treats women like disposable servants?" Emma's hand moved to her belly protectively. This baby deserves better than learning that love means tolerating abuse, and betrayal means nothing as long as money's involved. "I'm not destroying our family. I'm saving my child from becoming like you. Would you sacrifice everything comfortable to give your child something better?" The question rippled through the crowd, women especially leaning in closer, their expressions shifting from shock to something resembling solidarity. Judge Morrison moved beside Emma quietly, his presence offering silent support, and Emma felt gratitude crack through her armor for just a moment before she reinforced it. "Mrs. Vance," Mr. Chin spoke again, his tone respectful but firm. "Perhaps we should adjourn to somewhere more private to discuss the future of our business relationship. This is clearly a family matter that doesn't require an audience." He gestured toward a side room, and Emma nodded, grateful for the escape route even though she'd accomplished what she came for. Public revelation that couldn't be buried or denied. "Of course, Mr. Chun. I appreciate your discretion." She turned to Michael and Lorraine, her expression hardening. "Don't follow us. This conversation is between business partners, and you're neither anymore." Michael flinched as if she'd struck him, and Lorraine's face turned a dangerous shade of red that suggested a barely controlled explosion. "You can't just walk away with our deal." Lorraine's voice rose shrilly, drawing stares from guests who'd started pretending not to listen. "We spent 18 months building these relationships, investing time and money." Emma cut her off with a laugh that had nothing to do with humor. "Your time, your money, built on partnerships with companies I own. Every manufacturer you negotiated with, every supplier you courted, they were all mine, Lorraine. You were never building anything. You were asking permission from me without even knowing it." She paused, letting that reality sink in. "And now that you know, let me be crystal clear. Permission denied. The Vance family will never have access to Carter Industries or any of its holdings. Not now. Not ever." The finality in her voice was unmistakable, and Emma watched 18 months of Lorraine's planning disintegrate in real time. The older woman swayed slightly, Judge Morrison moving instinctively to steady her, though his expression suggested his sympathy was limited. Michael stood frozen, his career and reputation crumbling around him, while Vanessa had quietly disappeared into the crowd, already distancing herself from the disaster he'd become. Emma followed Mr. Chun and his delegation into the private room, leaving the ballroom buzzing with gossip that would dominate society pages for months. Inside, away from the audience, she finally allowed herself to breathe, the adrenaline that had carried her through confrontation beginning to ebb. Mr. Chun gestured for her to sit, his expression kind despite the chaos she'd just created. "Your mother would be very proud," he said softly, and Emma felt tears threaten for the first time all evening. "She told me once that she was building Carter Industries not for herself, but for you, so you'd never be powerless the way she was in her first marriage. She said you had her strength, but would need time to learn how to use it." He smiled. "I think you've learned well." "Thank you," Emma whispered, her composure cracking slightly now that she was safe from hostile eyes. "I'm sorry you had to witness that spectacle. It wasn't how I wanted our first meeting to go." Mr. Chun waved off her apology with practiced grace. "Business is always personal, Mrs. Vance. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying or selling something." He pulled out a leather folder, laying documents across the table between them. "Your mother and I had agreements in place for 15 years. I'd like to continue that relationship with you, if you're willing. But first, I need to understand your intentions. Tonight's revelation, was it purely personal, or do you have plans for Carter Industries' future? Have you ever been asked to prove you're more than your pain?" Emma straightened her spine, pushing grief and anger aside to focus on the question that would determine her company's trajectory. "Both," she admitted honestly. "Tonight was personal. I needed my husband and his mother to understand they couldn't treat me as worthless and expect no consequences. But Carter Industries is bigger than my marriage. My mother built something extraordinary, and I intend to honor that by expanding it strategically, ethically, and in ways that benefit everyone involved." She pulled out her own documents, expansion plans she'd been developing for months, new partnerships she'd quietly cultivated, innovations in manufacturing sustainability that would position Carter Industries as an industry leader. Mr. Chun reviewed them carefully, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement. His colleagues leaned in, pointing at specific sections. Asking technical questions, Emma answered with confidence born from months of preparation. "This is impressive work," Mr. Chun finally said, looking at Emma with new respect. "Your mother chose well when she left everything to you. These proposals are innovative, financially sound, and address concerns our industry has been struggling with for years." He glanced at his colleagues, who nodded agreement. "We'd like to move forward with Carter Industries, Mrs. Vance. Under your leadership, not the Vance families." Relief flooded through Emma, so intensely she felt dizzy. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret this partnership." They spent the next hour discussing specifics, timelines, investments, expansion into new markets. And with each agreement, Emma felt herself transforming from the broken woman Lorraine had tried to create into the leader her mother had raised her to become. A knock on the door interrupted their discussion. Judge Morrison entered cautiously, his expression troubled. "Emma, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation in the ballroom. Lorraine collapsed, and Michael is demanding to see you. He's threatening to call the police, claiming you've stolen family assets." His tone suggested he found Michael's claims ridiculous, but Emma stood anyway, suddenly exhausted. "Stolen assets that were never theirs," she said wearily. "But I suppose we should address this before it escalates further." She turned to Mr. Chin apologetically. "I'll have my lawyers send over the contracts we discussed. Thank you for seeing tonight's drama about the business underneath. Family matters are complicated, Mrs. Vance. We understand." Mr. Chin stood, offering his hand. "But for what it's worth, watching you reclaim your power tonight was extraordinary. My daughter should meet you. I think you'd inspire her." Emma shook his hand, feeling validation from this stranger that she'd never received from her own husband. Back in the ballroom, the scene had deteriorated further. Lorraine sat in a chair surrounded by concerned guests, her face pale, but her eyes burning with fury that suggested her collapse had been more strategic than medical. Michael paced nearby, his phone clutched in one hand, his other running through his hair repeatedly. When he saw Emma, he rushed forward with desperate energy. "You need to fix this," he hissed, grabbing her arm hard enough to hurt. Judge Morrison immediately stepped between them, his voice carrying judicial authority. "Mr. Vance, I suggest you release your wife before witnesses see you commit assault." Michael dropped Emma's arm as if burned, but his expression remained wild, cornered. "Furthermore, as someone with extensive legal experience, I can assure you that your wife has stolen nothing. Assets legally inherited and properly documented are hers to control as she sees fit." "But she lied to us. She let us believe." Michael's voice cracked, and Emma saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not a villain, but a weak man shaped by a domineering mother, too cowardly to develop his own moral compass. It didn't excuse his cruelty, but it explained it, and somehow that made everything sadder. "I let you believe what you wanted to believe, Michael. You never asked about my mother's company. You never asked what I inherited. You assumed I had nothing because that's what fit your narrative. The poor girl who needed rescuing. who should be grateful for the Vance family's generosity. Emma's voice was steady but tired, so tired of fighting, of explaining, of justifying her existence. I'm done defending myself to people who never valued me. The marriage is over. My lawyers will contact you about custody arrangements for our child. And the Vance family will never have access to Carter Industries or any of its resources. Lorraine stood shakily, supported by staff who looked uncertain about their role in this drama. You'll regret this, she said, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. We have lawyers too. We'll fight you for everything. The house, the money, custody of that baby. You think you won, but this is just the beginning. Would you let them intimidate you after everything you'd survived? Emma looked at Lorraine and felt nothing but pity for a woman so consumed by control she destroyed her own family to maintain it. Fight all you want, Lorraine. I have 18 months of documented abuse, recordings of Michael's affair, and financial records proving I've always been self-sufficient. No judge will give you custody, and the house you're threatening me with? I checked the deed this afternoon. It's mortgaged beyond its value, and you're 3 months behind on payments. You've been living on credit and expectations, and now that the Taiwan deal is gone, you've got nothing. The revelation silenced Lorraine completely, her face draining of color as the reality of her financial situation became public knowledge. Michael looked between them, confusion written across his features. What is she talking about? The house is paid for. You told me. But Lorraine's expression confirmed Emma's words were true, and Michael's last bit of foundation crumbled beneath him. Emma turned away from them both, too exhausted to watch their empire collapse any further. Judge Morrison, would you mind escorting me out? I'd like to go home. Not the Vance mansion. That had never been home, but the apartment she'd quietly rented 3 months ago, preparing for exactly this moment. The judge offered his arm gracefully, and together they walked through the ballroom, while 500 guests watched in stunned silence. The morning after the gala, Emma woke in her small apartment to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the blessed silence of being truly alone for the first time in 18 months. Her phone had been buzzing relentlessly since dawn, reporters requesting interviews, society friends suddenly remembering they knew her, and one particularly desperate voicemail from Michael begging her to reconsider. She deleted them all without listening fully and made herself tea in a kitchen where no one would critique how she held the cup or mock the way she buttered toast. Freedom tasted like ordinary morning rituals performed without an audience of critics. By noon, the story had exploded across every platform. Society blogs ran headlines like "Billionaire Heiress Destroys Husband's Empire at Charity Gala," and "Pregnant Wife Reveals Secret Fortune While Mother-in-Law Watches." The details were sensationalized, but essentially accurate. Emma Vance, previously unknown and dismissed as a nobody, had revealed herself as owner of Carter Industries and systematically dismantled her husband's family business in front of 500 witnesses. The comment sections overflowed with women sharing their own stories of being underestimated, dismissed, and eventually vindicated. Emma's lawyer arrived at 10 with contracts, legal filings, and a smile that suggested he was enjoying this case more than any he'd handled in years. The Vance family's lawyers contacted me at 7 this morning, Robertson said, spreading documents across Emma's small dining table. They're threatening to sue for fraud, emotional distress, and about 6 other things that won't hold up in court. I told them to review the recordings you provided and reconsider their position. And, Emma asked, cradling her tea, feeling her baby kick with what seemed like approval of the chaos they'd created together. Robert's smile widened into something predatory. They withdrew every threat within an hour. Apparently, hearing 18 months of documented abuse and Michael's affair laid out in chronological order made them realize how badly they'd lose in court. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. I've drafted divorce papers citing adultery, emotional abuse, and irreconcilable differences. Given the evidence, I'm confident we can secure full custody with supervised visitation for Michael only. Lorraine gets no access whatsoever unless you explicitly grant it. Would you let them near your child after everything they'd done? Emma didn't hesitate. No access for Lorraine. and Michael's visitation should be contingent on him completing therapy and demonstrating genuine change. Our daughter deserves better than learning to accept mistreatment as love. Robert nodded approvingly, making notes. There's also the matter of the Vance family's financial collapse. Without the Taiwan deal, they're essentially bankrupt. The house is going into foreclosure. Michael's been let go from the family company. What's left of it? And Lorraine's social standing has evaporated overnight. Several families have already withdrawn invitations and memberships. He paused, watching Emma's face carefully. They're going to ask you for help eventually. Probably claim it's for the baby's sake. I need to know how you want to handle that. Emma set down her tea, her hand moving to her belly, where new life grew despite everything that had tried to destroy her. They made their choices, Robert. I'm not responsible for rebuilding what they tore down through their own cruelty. If they want help, they can start by acknowledging what they did and making genuine amends. Not because it benefits them, but because it's right. She met his eyes steadily. Until then, they get nothing from me except legal boundaries and supervised distance. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. Judge Morrison arrived with his daughter Sarah, a corporate lawyer who'd heard about Emma's situation and wanted to offer support. I've seen too many women destroyed by families like the Vances, Sarah said, her expression intense. What you did last night, walking in there and reclaiming your power, that's going to inspire women for years. But the aftermath is going to be brutal. They'll try to paint you as vindictive, manipulative, cold. You need a strategy for managing the narrative. Emma listened carefully as Sarah laid out a plan. Selective interviews with reporters known for fair coverage, a statement emphasizing her focus on her child's well-being rather than revenge, and strategic silence when critics tried to bait her into defending herself. The truth is on your side, Sarah explained. But truth doesn't always win in the court of public opinion. You need to be smart about how you present yourself going forward. What about Carter Industries? Emma asked, because the company her mother built mattered more than her personal drama. How do I protect it from this scandal? Sarah smiled, clearly having anticipated the question. You lean into it. Carter Industries is now known as the company owned by a woman who refused to be destroyed by an abusive marriage. That's powerful branding in today's market. Companies are desperate to demonstrate they support women's empowerment. You're living proof of what that looks like. Use it. She pulled out market analysis, showing Carter Industries' stock value had actually increased overnight as investors responded positively to Emma's story. Have you ever watched your worst moment become your greatest asset? Emma stared at the graphs showing her company's growth, feeling something shift inside her chest, not just survival, but actual triumph. The kind her mother had always said was possible if she stayed patient and strategic. My mother would love this, she whispered, tears finally coming after holding them back for so long. Sarah squeezed her hand gently. She's probably watching and cheering you on. What you did took incredible courage. They spent the next 2 hours planning Emma's next moves, restructuring Carter Industries' board to include more women, launching initiatives supporting domestic abuse survivors, and establishing a foundation in her mother's name that would help women escape situations like Emma had endured. Each decision transformed her pain into purpose, her suffering into strength that could help others. By evening, Emma's phone showed 73 missed calls from Michael and 12 from Lorraine, each voicemail more desperate than the last. She listened to one from Michael, dated that afternoon. Emma, please. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'm begging you to answer. Mom's in the hospital, stress-related collapse. They're saying, the house is being seized tomorrow. I've lost my job. Everything's falling apart, and I know it's my fault, but please, for the baby's sake, can we just talk? Robert had warned her this would come, the moment when her oppressors realized their complete dependence on her mercy. Emma played the message again, listening for genuine remorse beneath the desperation. But all she heard was a man sorry he'd lost, not sorry he'd hurt her. She typed a single response. My lawyer will contact you about custody arrangements. Everything else between us is finished. Get help, Michael. Not for me or the baby, but for yourself. She hit send and blocked his number, feeling lighter with each boundary she established. The baby kicked, and Emma laughed softly. Your daddy's going to have to learn that consequences are real, sweetheart. And your grandmother's going to learn that cruelty has a price. But you and me? We're going to be just fine. The next morning brought news that the Vance mansion had officially been seized by the bank, its contents being auctioned to cover debts. Emma received an email from the auction house asking if she wanted to purchase any items of sentimental value. She scrolled through photos of furniture she'd polished, rooms she'd cleaned while being mocked, the grand staircase where she'd felt invisible for 18 months. Nothing there held sentiment worth preserving. She deleted the email and moved on. A week later, the divorce papers were served. Michael signed them without contest, his lawyer apparently having convinced him that fighting would only expose more of his failures publicly. Lorraine tried once to contact Emma through a society friend, claiming she wanted to apologize and rebuild their relationship for the baby's sake. Emma's response was brief and final. No relationship is possible without accountability. When you're ready to genuinely acknowledge the harm you caused and demonstrate real change through actions, not words, we can revisit this conversation. Until then, stay away from me and my child. The Taiwanese deal Emma had blocked from the Vances, Mr. Chun restructured it directly with Carter Industries, increasing its value by $3 billion because he no longer had to route it through the Vance family's failing company. Emma signed the contracts in her new office, modest but professional, decorated with photos of her mother and inspirational quotes about resilience. "This is for you, Mom," she whispered, her signature finalizing the biggest deal of her career. "Everything you built, everything you taught me, it all mattered. Would you forgive people who destroyed you if they finally apologized?" Emma thought about that question often in the weeks following the gala. She'd received hundreds of messages from women thanking her for showing them that leaving abusive situations was possible, that reclaiming power wasn't selfish but necessary. Each message reminded her that her story wasn't just about personal revenge. It was about refusing to accept that suffering in silence was noble, or that enduring cruelty made you strong. Michael requested supervised visitation after the baby was born, claiming he'd started therapy and wanted to be involved in his daughter's life. Emma's lawyer investigated his claims thoroughly before allowing limited contact. 1 hour weekly, always supervised, contingent on continued therapy and demonstrated behavioral change. "I won't deny my daughter a relationship with her father if he genuinely becomes someone worthy of knowing," Emma told Robert. "But I also won't expose her to the man he was when he hurt me." Lorraine made no such attempts. According to social media and society gossip, she'd moved to Florida to live with a sister, her reputation in the city utterly destroyed. Judge Morrison reported that she'd been dropped from every charity board and social club she'd once dominated, her name now synonymous with cruelty disguised as sophistication. Emma felt no satisfaction in Lorraine's exile, just a quiet acknowledgement that actions had consequences, and people who built empires on the suffering of others eventually faced their reckoning. 3 months before her due date, Emma stood in the nursery she created in her apartment. Soft colors, carefully chosen furniture, books lining shelves because her daughter would grow up knowing that knowledge was power and silence was sometimes the strongest form of resistance. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling strong kicks that suggested this baby would be fierce like her grandmother, strategic like her mother, and hopefully kinder than the family she'd been born into. "We did it," Emma whispered to the child inside her. "We survived, we fought back, and we won. Not because we destroyed them, but because we refused to let them destroy us." That's the difference your grandmother understood. Real power isn't about hurting others, it's about protecting yourself and helping those who can't protect themselves yet. The baby kicked harder, as if in agreement, and Emma smiled through tears that were finally about joy instead of pain. The empire that tried to crush her lay in ruins, but the empire she was building, one based on integrity, strength, and refusing to accept less than she deserved, was just beginning. 6 months after the gala that changed everything, Emma stood in Carter Industries' newly renovated headquarters, her daughter Grace sleeping peacefully in a carrier against her chest. The boardroom buzzed with energy as executives presented quarterly results that exceeded every projection. Partnerships expanded, revenue doubled, and the company's reputation as an ethical leader in manufacturing had attracted talent from across the industry. Emma listened with one hand resting protectively on Grace's back, feeling her mother's presence in every success, every decision, every moment of building something worthy of the legacy she'd inherited. Mrs. Vance, the sustainability initiative you proposed has generated unprecedented interest, her CFO reported, pulling up slides showing environmental impact reductions and cost savings. 3 competitors have approached us about collaboration, and the media coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. Carter Industries is now seen as the gold standard for responsible manufacturing. Emma smiled, remembering how Lorraine had dismissed her ideas as naive, how Michael had called her incapable of understanding real business. Their underestimation had been her greatest advantage. After the meeting, Emma retreated to her office, where photos of Grace's first months covered one wall. Tiny fingers gripping Emma's thumb, first smiles, peaceful sleep in a nursery filled with love instead of tension. Judge Morrison had sent a silver frame engraved with words that made Emma cry. To Grace, daughter of the strongest woman I know. Sarah Chun had become not just her lawyer, but her friend, visiting weekly with advice, encouragement, and stories about other women who'd reclaimed their lives after abuse. Her phone buzzed with a message from Robert. Michael's therapist confirms genuine progress. He's requesting increased visitation. Your call. Emma stared at the message, wrestling with complicated emotions that hadn't resolved despite months of distance. Michael had been consistent with his supervised visits, had completed an intensive therapy program, and had sent letters to Grace that Emma saved in a box for when her daughter was old enough to decide what relationship she wanted with her father. What do you think, Gracie? Emma whispered to the sleeping baby. Should we give your daddy another chance to prove he's changed? Grace stirred slightly, her tiny face peaceful and trusting, and Emma felt the weight of that trust like a sacred responsibility. She typed back to Robert, increased to 2 hours, still supervised. I need 6 more months of consistent behavior before considering unsupervised contact. And he needs to complete the accountability program we discussed, making amends not just to me, but to everyone he hurt. The door opened after a soft knock, and Mr. Chin entered with his daughter Vanessa, whose presence surprised Emma enough that she straightened instinctively. They hadn't spoken since the gala, and Emma had assumed Vanessa would avoid her forever out of embarrassment or resentment. Instead, Vanessa looked nervous but determined, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Mrs. Vance, thank you for seeing me, Vanessa said quietly. I know I have no right to your time, but I needed to apologize in person. Mr. Chun stood slightly behind his daughter, his expression proud, but letting her speak for herself. What I did with Michael, having an affair with a married man, helping his mother try to erase you, it was inexcusable. I told myself it was just business, that feelings didn't matter in the world we operated in. But that was a lie I used to avoid taking responsibility. Have you ever received an apology from someone you never expected to acknowledge their wrong? Emma studied Vanessa carefully, looking for signs of manipulation or self-serving motives, but saw only genuine shame and determination to make amends. Why now? Emma asked, not unkindly. 6 months have passed. You could have just moved on with your life. Because I've been watching what you built since that night, Vanessa replied, gesturing toward the office that represented Emma's success. You took the worst situation imaginable and transformed it into something that helps other women escape abuse. You didn't just survive. You created meaning from your suffering. And I realize that I've been the person helping to create situations like yours, valuing success over humanity, treating other women as obstacles instead of human beings deserving respect. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. I want to be better than that. And I thought maybe if I acknowledged what I did and asked how I could make amends, I could start. Emma felt Grace shift against her chest, the weight of her daughter grounding her in what mattered. Apology accepted, Vanessa. Not because what you did was okay, but because growth requires acknowledging harm and changing behavior. She gestured for them to sit, suddenly tired of standing. If you're serious about making amends, Carter Industries has a new initiative supporting women in corporate environments. We're developing training programs about workplace ethics, professional boundaries, and dismantling cultures that enable abuse. We could use someone with your experience and networks to help implement it. Vanessa's eyes widened with surprise and something that looked like hope. You'd let me work with you after everything? Emma smiled, feeling her mother's influence in the decision because forgiveness without boundaries was weakness. But strategic collaboration that created positive change was strength. I'd let you earn the chance to contribute to something meaningful. Whether that becomes ongoing collaboration depends entirely on your actions, not your words. She watched Vanessa absorb this, saw her nod with determination, and felt satisfied that redemption was possible for people willing to do the real work of change. Chun smiled proudly at both women, and Emma understood that this was what her mother had meant about power, using it to create opportunities for growth, not just punishment for failure. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment's small living room while Grace played on a blanket surrounded by toys, her laughter the most beautiful sound Emma had ever heard. The doorbell rang unexpectedly, and Emma checked the security camera to see Michael standing in the hallway, looking nervous and holding a small gift bag. She hesitated, then opened the door, but didn't invite him inside, creating the boundary she'd learned was essential. Emma, I know I'm not supposed to be here outside scheduled visits, Michael started, his voice careful and respectful in a way it never had been during their marriage. But I wanted to give you this in person. Not for Grace, for you. He extended the gift bag, and Emma took it cautiously, pulling out a leather journal with her initials embossed on the cover. Inside the front page, Michael had written in careful script, for documenting the future you're building, not the past I destroyed. I'm sorry doesn't cover what I did, but I'm trying to become someone who deserves to be in Grace's life, even peripherally. Thank you for giving me that chance. Would you accept an apology from someone who destroyed you? Emma held the journal, feeling its weight physically and symbolically, and looked at Michael, really looked at him for the first time in months. He'd lost weight. His face carried lines that spoke of genuine struggle, and his eyes held something she'd never seen during their marriage. Actual humility. Thank you for this, she said quietly. And thank you for doing the work in therapy. Grace deserves a father who's dealt with his issues, even if that father and I will never be together again. I know. I'm not asking for reconciliation or forgiveness or anything beyond what you're willing to give. Michael's voice was steady but sad. I just wanted you to know that watching you succeed, seeing how strong you've always been despite how we treated you, it destroyed every excuse I'd made for my behavior. You didn't need rescuing. You needed respect. And I failed to give you that every single day we were married. Emma felt tears threaten but blinked them back because this moment wasn't about Michael's redemption. It was about her choosing how to respond with wisdom rather than anger. Keep doing the therapy, Michael. Keep showing up for Grace. Keep becoming someone better than who you were. That's the only amendment that matters. He nodded, backing toward the elevator, and Emma closed the door, leaning against it as complicated emotions washed through her. 3 months later, Emma stood at a podium addressing 200 women at a conference about escaping abusive relationships and reclaiming economic power. Grace was with Sarah for the afternoon, giving Emma space to share her story fully without holding back details for protective motherhood. I spent 18 months being told I was worthless, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. 18 months where every day brought new humiliations, new betrayals, new reasons to believe I deserved the treatment I received. And the worst part wasn't the abuse itself. It was almost believing them. She paused, making eye contact with women in the audience who nodded with recognition, who'd lived their own versions of her nightmare. But here's what I learned. The people who try hardest to convince you you're powerless are the ones most afraid of what you'll do when you remember your strength. My mother-in-law, my husband, they didn't break me because I was weak. They targeted me because they sensed I was strong and that strength threatened their control. Applause erupted, but Emma raised a hand, needing to finish. Reclaiming your power isn't about revenge, though that can feel satisfying in the moment. It's about refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your worth. It's about building something so solid, so true, so aligned with your values that no one can take it from you again. She pulled out her phone, showing the audience a photo of Grace. This is my daughter. She'll grow up knowing her mother didn't stay in a situation that hurt her. She'll learn that love without respect isn't love at all. And maybe if I do this right, she'll never accept less than she deserves because she'll have watched me refuse to accept first. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, women approaching Emma afterward with stories of their own escapes, their own reclamations, their own journeys from victim to survivor to victor. Emma listened to each one, offering advice when asked, resources when needed, and solidarity always, because she understood that her story mattered most when it helped others write their own endings. That night, Emma sat in Grace's nursery, rocking her daughter to sleep while singing the same lullaby her mother had sung to her decades ago. "You are strong, you are worthy, you are loved beyond measure," she sang softly, and Grace's eyes drifted closed, peaceful and safe in a home built on truth instead of performance. Emma thought about the mansion she'd escaped, the empire she'd dismantled, and the life she'd built from the ruins of her marriage. Have you ever looked back at your worst moment and realized it was actually your beginning? Emma had. The gala where she'd revealed her power, destroyed her oppressors, and reclaimed her life. It hadn't been an ending, but a starting point for everything that came after. Carter Industries thrived under her leadership. Grace grew healthy and happy in an environment free from toxicity. Michael worked toward redemption from a respectful distance. And Lorraine, wherever she disappeared to, had learned that cruelty didn't build empires. It destroyed them from within. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Chun. "Board meeting tomorrow approved your proposal for the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. Your mother would be so proud of who you've become." Emma smiled, tears finally falling freely because she'd spent so long being strong that moments of pure emotion still caught her off guard. She typed back, "I hope so. Everything I'm building is because of what she taught me. That power isn't about dominating others. It's about refusing to be dominated. That success isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you improve along the way." She set down her phone and looked at Grace, peaceful in her crib, and felt a completeness that had nothing to do with revenge accomplished or justice served. This was the real victory, building a life so full of love, purpose, and integrity that the people who tried to destroy her became irrelevant to her happiness. The woman who'd walked into that gala 6 months ago, pregnant and desperate and carrying evidence of 18 months of abuse, had been powerful. But the woman sitting here now, holding her sleeping daughter and running a company that helped thousands of people, was unstoppable. "We made it, Mom," Emma whispered to the mother she still misses every day. "We survived, we fought back, and we built something beautiful from the ashes they try to bury us in." And every woman who watches our story and decides she deserves better, that's your legacy living on. Outside her window, the city lights sparkled like possibilities, and Emma felt ready for all of them, whatever they brought, because she'd learned the greatest truth of all. The only person who could define her worth was herself, and she decided she was priceless. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and drop a comment retelling us the part of the story you enjoyed most.